Hello, everyone. We are here for a petite term paper presentation program, and I'm very happy to have Alyssa and Laura live with me here in studio at the Institute for Aliveness term paper presentation session. Danny will be joining us shortly, and first we are going to enter into a portal of discovery where we will find a message sent to us by the beautiful Florina in Austria, if I can open it. All right. So here we have it. I will share my screen and we will see what's up. Oh! You know what? I cannot play the sound. Technical errors. Okay, I'm no longer sharing screen, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Then I will have to show you computer to computer, which will be a beautiful way to do it. All right. So while this is downloading, we'll get a preview as to the term paper topics of Laura and Alyssa, which you all get to also listen to. Laura, what's the title of your term paper?
Mine is auto-urine therapy. So it's bridging the distance of making it more socially acceptable to drink our own urine and for external use also, and why has it become so socially conditionally unacceptable?
I love
in
it.
the West. In the West.
In the East too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Indians think it's gross to drink their own pee. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's gone out the window. Well, most of them. Some of them have the historical thing of like, my father swore that I need to do this and I do it, but I don't tell anyone I do it. So there's still a social taboo. Okay, and we'll save the previews for a moment and we will. Welcome to the studio, Danny. Here's
classmates, and wonderful to share a little bit about my term paper. I choose the topic wheatgrass, and asking the question if it could be or might be a medicinal remedy. I chose this topic because I came in touch with wheatgrass when I was in Bali the first time, several years ago. And I tried it and I found it very interesting. And then I met a woman in Bali and she's doing crystal sound. So she's playing with these giant crystal bowls. And I studied with her, and she was also in Austria, and we did some projects together. And she's highly promoting wheatgrass as a medicinal remedy. And so I also started to grow it in trays and choose it. And I found it actually very beneficial for health. So I really, there was some question popping up because I thought, okay, if you can take wheatgrass and choose it, and it might have a very medicinal effect on the human body, why couldn't you take white grass? Because white grass actually must be even more potent. So I researched about that, and I found out that there are a few people who actually are very much into wild grass and going out, cutting the grass and choosing it, and I'm very convinced that this is very beneficial for human health. So I also tried that, and my own experience with that are really very interesting. And yeah, I can share if anybody is interested in that. But I choose then wheatgrass because in this there's so much more found than whitegrass, and I also wanted to look at studies and everything. So there is so much more studies found and than versus wild grass. So that's why I choose wheatgrass. And also interesting was that when I wasn't very sure what kind of topic I choose, it was really 1 week before deadline that I really finally said, okay, I want to write about wheatgrass because this is something I'm interested in. And I wrote Andi and I said, I want to write about wheatgrass. And she said, of course you can, but she's not very convinced about the medicinal effect of wheatgrass, because she says in her own experience with the detox retreats she gave, also the people were served shots of wheatgrass, but around 20% of the people had some side effects. So so it's very interesting, and I also have my ideas why this could be. So what do I want to share about my term paper, or what do I found out what I really think like this is something to share? So it was very interesting, the whole process. Actually, I really enjoyed it, to go deep into this topic. And I want to share about the pioneers of wheatgrass, which was Charles Franklin Schnabel. He was born 1895 in America, and he was an American agriculture, and he was very much in livestock, and he treated ill chickens with wheatgrass and other cereal grasses, and actually found out that they got healed again by that. And also not only got healed, they also produced much larger eggs. And then he did research in this direction, and he also gave wheatgrass to his relatives, and he could always see some very beneficial effects. And then he invented the first multivitamin, which was a wheatgrass powder actually, and it was sold all over America. Yeah. And another one which inspired me highly was Anne Wigmore. She wrote several books. She was born 1909, and she had a grandmother, and her grandmother was a healer. And as a child, she grew up with her grandmother, and she was always seeing the people coming and how the grandmother treated them. And the grandmother also used wheatgrass and sweet grasses. So wheatgrass is in the family of sweet grasses, as all cereal grasses. And the grandmother was healing the people with that. And when Anne was in her 50s, she had a very bad car accident, and both of her legs were very wounded. And actually the doctor said we have to cut them. And they also found that she has cancer. So this was really a mess. And her reaction was no, she don't stay in the hospital. She don't want to have her legs cut. And she went home, and her uncle, who every day carried her out on the into the grass and set her down, and she was just eating the grass and the plants there, and she got healed again. And she also founded an institute which is called the Hippocrates Institute, which still remains, and they're still doing very much with wheatgrass healing. She also wrote several books. One is Be Your Own Doctor. I can highly recommend. I found it very interesting to read. And what else? Another one is Franz Konz. He's a German, and he founded the Urmedizin, the original medicine in English, and he's also promoting wildgrass very highly, and it's very interesting also what he he also wrote a very big book, and it's very interesting what he wrote about it. And he was also healing his own cancer with the help of wild plants and also wild grass. So actually I found very much people who are talking about the beneficial effect of wheatgrass and wildgrass. And one woman I was in contact, also I was writing with her back and forward, is a German woman who also is doing wheatgrass or wild-grass actually more, and with her clients. And she also said it's amazing what she can see, what effect it has on the human system. But you also have to be very careful to not overtake it, because it has a very strong effect. So really starting little by little. Yeah, if what else? There are some studies done. I don't want to go too deep into that, but you of course can read my term paper if you want. I can send it to you. So with the studies, there are some. What was kind of difficult for me, I just want to share, is that with the study part, you always found so many studies which are done with animals, and I found that very critical, and it actually makes me sad. So I don't want to share so much about this, but there are some studies done in humans which also lead into that direction. It were just small studies, but showing that it might be very beneficial for cancer patients. And yeah, so I also think because of wheatgrass, it's this really dark green juice. When you take wheatgrass and you choose it, it's so dark and dark green, and it's like really the most potent sunlight, actually. That's how it feels, and my own experience with that is actually that it's very, very beneficial. But this is only my own experience and my own opinion. And if you want to talk about it, if you might have your own experience with that, I'm very interested in it. And if you want to read my term paper, as I said, you're warmly welcome. And so that's it for now, and all the best. And I'm very looking forward to hear about your term paper research. So bye.
Yay! So give Florina a big applause. That was so great. I want to mention the different research methods that she went through there, because we are in the week of research methods to start to understand what we're doing on a bigger picture. So a lot of this term paper and many of your body term papers, as they should have been, were literature reviews. So looking at all of the existing research about it and somehow positing a question or a call for further research or whatever it might have been. She had a mixed modality of obviously embodied research, so her own embodied testing. And even though she had a bias against it from what she had read from Anne Wigmore and all of the other sources, I was obviously the strong counter bias, where I was like, no, man, I don't know, wheatgrass. And so she was also able to incorporate that and hopefully write about that in a way that made it more of a balanced playing field, more than just going to everyone who's saying wheatgrass is great. You always want to look at the counter perspective. So embodied research, literature review, counter bias, owning her own bias, which she did. She said, this is just my feeling about it. And she looked into laboratory studies or clinical studies, which were mostly done on animals. And she also actually just changed the topic of the paper from whitegrass to wheatgrass because there was more available on it. So this would have been almost a perfect precursor if she wanted to do, let's say, her thesis. And this is just, she doesn't want to, but hypothetically, or on wheatgrass, it would have been a perfect preparation because, you know, you go first to where there's information so that you figure out how to get more information, which is research on what it is that you really want to investigate. And so I think that like it was a really robust process that Florina went through, even though it was the last minute. She was like really on it. She had changed her term paper topic, I think 2 or 3 times before that. So it was, you know, that emotional roller coaster as well. And I loved the interaction with her about it, where, I mean, I personally have such a strong bias against wheatgrass that I was like, I don't really want you to research this. And, you know, I was just like upfront and honest with her. And also letting her that space to like, if you want to do this, by all means, let's do this. I'll support you in doing this. And so I love that she like really followed that inner calling and was like, didn't submit to a perceived authority figure and went for it. And I think she was really happy with the outcome. I'm stoked about her experience of writing it. And we have this piece. And as she said, she'll send it to you immediately. The plan for all of you is to, once we go through a few rounds of edits, this was kind of the first base. And then we'll go through a few rounds of edits. I'll go through it and I'll ask some questions, and we'll work together to get it to a level of publishing. And some of you, maybe it's already at a level of publishing, which is amazing. And if it's not, it's still amazing. That then we'll release them all together. And so you can read that version, later version, or you can read the now version as you like. Yeah, but super, super excited about that one and how it went with Florina. So if you have any questions, you guys can ask them now, and we can have her answer once she watches the recording. Or you're welcome to send questions to her one-on-one. Up to you. And if no one has questions, yeah, Jenny.
A question. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously, wheat is not tolerable to many people. So is it the chlorophyll, the green in the wheatgrass that's so beneficial, or was there other phytonutrients, or what was it that was like so nutritious? And
yeah, so I would definitely recommend to read her book, but it's definitely the chlorophyll. And you were asking also to the counter bias. The like simple counter bias is that wheat is not meant for human consumption. That the Poaceae family, the grass family, is meant for chickens, as it was originally seen to be healing for. But I think I also have karma with this plant. I'll own my own karma and bias. I was inducted into a secret society as part of a Native American Indian tradition when I was growing up. And my secret society name was actually Sweetgrass, which I'm not supposed to share with anyone, but you guys will hold that in confidence. And so it obviously, I mean, there's obviously karma there for me. So I'm celebrating how Florina is helping me unpack that personal karma and hopefully serving to the world a question of plant medicine in general, and how the plant world has the potential to help us heal. Okay, so let's head to Laura next. If you're ready, Laura, I will unmute you.
Okay, I'm not 100% on the ball today, just time of the month, a little bit hot and bothered, but I'll do my best. So this research was on urine therapy, and it came from like curiosity from being able to see how people who are doing the practice and how they seem more connected and have this inner glow, and that in some countries that it is quite acceptable, Japan, Korea, India, or parts of India, and that if we look at the cosmetics, like some of the ingredients, one of them could be urea. So when people actually look, it's like, where is this coming from? And it's normally from cows. So I wanted to kind of, it was the motivation a little bit was, why does people so readily go towards big pharma rather than going and using more natural products? And where does this come from in the West, that it's just perceived as so dirty and disgusting, and how we're socially conditioned that we wash our hands after going for a wee, and why is it seen as so dirty? So the content of urine is actually mostly water with minerals and salts and hormones and enzymes, which for me seems quite normal to go back into the body. And maybe people say it's poisonous because of the urea, but the way that it's filtered back, it doesn't go back into the bloodstream directly anyway, so it's not dangerous in any way. And historically, and closer to home, as babies, we were developed through the amniotic fluid, which is primarily urine. So that fact alone is like, okay, bringing us closer to drinking our own urine as adults. And so that's kind of like on a general level that we can all relate to. And then obviously the Native American tribes, people who live closer to nature, it's just quite a normal spiritual practice. From Ayurveda, they call it the mother of Ayurvedic medicine. So beyond going towards the use of herbs, it's urine therapy first. And the Tibetan monks also drank and drink their urine, and monks choose to drink the urine of higher lamas because they're perceived as purer. So in terms of kind of more mental clarity and purification of thoughts and being in the world. So that's kind of historically the background. And in terms of how to take it, I mean, when I have talked to people about urine therapy, I have brought it up in conversations, like quite a few weeks ago when I was doing the research, mainly because I was a bit bored of the whole virus conversation, but I wanted to gauge people's reactions and how they would initially respond to it. And in my circle of social interactions, it was a lot of resistance. But it also brought about a lot of laughter. It was like we all ended up laughing about the topic, which was really, that was the idea behind it also, just to plant the seeds and see if anyone did dare to at least even apply it externally, for example, not necessarily start drinking it. So thank you, Elisa, as you did. But in my normal social circle, that was just not accessible. And yeah, so the instructions would be, if you are taking allopathic medicine, then don't drink your own urine and start with the afternoon urine because it's less potent, less strong, and 1 hour after eating and 30 minutes before eating. And it's just to get into a practice of taking morning urine and the urine throughout the day. And there are books on urine therapy, but there's we're full of case studies, really convincing case studies, and there is very little research done on urine therapy. It's been proved, but on small scale research programs, that could have an antioxidant effect. But there's really, and I found one research paper, but I couldn't access it, on related to Raynaud's, which seems to be coming up. Raynaud's, like a circulatory problem in the hands, which I know a few friends have got that. So it was a shame that I couldn't access that. But it seems like there's a barrier to be able to really access the value of this therapy, which we all have access to, and it's free. And the case studies are pretty convincing. Obviously, they may not be so scientific. Armstrong, he wasn't a doctor, so he's very aware that he was a layperson offering a medical kind of practice, and his practice was to get his patients as such to drink their own urine and to also fast on water. So at what level does the fasting help, and how much is the urine actually, what's going on there completely? But all I would like to share on a personal level, because the seed was planted a few years ago, and I think the biggest one was, I'll share my itchy nipple, because I've had an itchy left nipple for a month, and then I did a fast. 3 days into the fast, it disappeared, and it was quite uncomfortable, I have to say, and visibly there wasn't anything. And 3 days into fast, disappeared. 3 days back out of the fast, it came back, and this was on raw and organic fruit and veggies. And then drinking the urine, it disappeared and hasn't come back. So that's on an internal level that it's done something. And I've had dermatitis on my hands, and I was washing my hands in urine, and I've had dermatitis where students would say, "What have you got on your hands?" because it was quite obvious, and disappeared. So very fast results, and now it's just part of my morning practice. I chant Om Namah Shivaya, drinking my warm urine very gratefully, and yeah, I do feel like a bit of a wild woman at the moment, but I'm just using no products, because I'm just using urine on my skin as moisturizer and conditioner, and I'm very grateful to have access to urine, and it helps the body on a homeostasis level, that the body doesn't need to work as hard. Helps with morning meditation because of the melatonin that's excreted out the body. The mind stays calmer, and yeah, if it's has antioxidative properties and kills viruses also, then why not? And I was really passionate about it, because I just thought, why aren't people accessing it? And at this time, why aren't people being more open to more alternative things? So I tried to contact Dr. van der Kroon, but he unfortunately didn't respond, which was a shame, because it would have been interesting to interview him. So yeah, I couldn't go quite scientifically as deep as I wanted to. They were more like case studies and personal reflections for my body term paper. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yay! Big round of applause for Laura.
Now, I just want to add, when I was a teenager, one of my friend's moms told me to put urine on my skin because I had very bad acne. And I really resisted, but I thought, okay, there's nothing to lose. And I remember still peeing in a cup and then using cotton wool and like a toner, I would put it over my face every morning, and it really worked. So it was a bit gross. I didn't tell anybody about it, but just wanted to share that. So yeah.
What exposure did your friend's mom have that she had that in her arsenal of advice?
I don't know. She just said that it's a traditional thing, and apparently in the culture, in the Afrikaans culture where she grew up, her parents used to do it, and it was just something they did.
So Afrikaans culture in South Africa.
Yeah, so that's like a Dutch kind of, our language is called Afrikaans, but it's from the Dutch kind of people. and I thought she was crazy, but I thought there's nothing to lose. And it makes sense because now that Laura mentioned about the urea and all the cosmetics, and obviously it doesn't got anything else that's unnatural. So, yeah. And
Wow,
Laura, did it help for your eczema, Laura?
It cleared. I think it was some type of dermatitis within a couple of days. Massive difference. Yeah, and I've got a few other physical things like putting it on bites and a swollen toe, just wrapped in tissue paper for like an hour and just gone.
Laura, will you share a little bit about the fermentation as well?
Yeah. So if you want to use it on your skin or on your hair, just have a bottle and leave the lid off for 5 days, and you'll see the color change. And it definitely smells. That's more the ammonia that you can smell. And then you just leave it on your hair for as long as possible. They say for 30 minutes, but I've not reached that far. But honestly, leaving on my hair for 2 minutes whilst I'm in the shower, my hair is silky soft afterwards. It's incredible. It doesn't look good now, but it's amazing. And just a funny little story, just before I got Tulsi the puppy, I was like, okay, I need to make sure that there's nothing on the floor that she can get to. But she found the pee with the lid off. It went on the floor. The whole bottle.
Did she drink it?
No, she didn't, but she comes and finds me when I go for a wee in the garden, and she drinks it. It's like, well, it's not going to do her any harm.
Yeah, well, but it also, if she's seeking it out, that's testament to its medicinal effect, because she doesn't have any of that cultural barrier that you started off with.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Okay, so
I have a question. To use it out like topically, like on hair or on the body, it is better to ferment it, or can you use it just like this? What do you think?
They say to get the best results, to use it, to let it ferment. Yeah. But I'm a bit lazy. If I'm going for a wee in the garden, I'll just apply it there and then. So, but yeah, I definitely think for hair to get the full effect, fermentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yay! So, okay, I'm totally biased towards this topic. I had my autourine therapy initiation years ago, more than 10 years ago. And it is something that I kind of just like put in and historically in my public lectures over time. I'll mention it and I'll say, but we'll talk about that another time, because it does have that wow factor. And the idea of planting seeds, like there were so many mixed modalities that you brought in, Laura, which is hugely celebrated in terms of definitely looking at the research that's there, doing thorough how-to analysis to apply it on yourself. And this is one of the best topics to really pioneer the field of embodied research, because it's so personal. There's also an element of autourine therapy which is hugely democratizing of medicine, and that is so much of what we stand for at TIFA. It's that revolution of taking power back into your own hands, and our own medicine is made inside, like literally, not on some energetic, spiritual, esoteric level, but like literally the medicine's inside. There are so many different stop points that we can appreciate with what you've created and how you went about it, Laura. First and foremost, looking at the historical context is so important. Looking at societal taboo, looking at that in different cultures. Like I've actually never read about the Native American use of it. So it's beautiful to have that also come in. And of course, what Danny brings up from the Afrikaans tradition, I would also, that's a whole nother alleyway that you could go down in searching, okay, was that maybe from local tribal people in South Africa that they learned that? And the counter study to that for the control, because the control is always necessary in our research, would be to look at pure Dutch culture and see if it still exists, someone's great grandparent. did they hear about this? Did they know? Is it in any of the Dutch folklore? That kind of thing. And these are anthropological methods of figuring things out. And so something so personal, so decentralized, I don't know what other word for it, but like something like that is very much under the folklore medicine. You can't synthesize urine. I mean, effectively you can, but funny enough, it's cheaper if you don't. And that's why a lot of Porta-John companies are owned by heart medication pharmaceutical companies, because they use the runoff of human urine, or why cow urine is so valuable to synthesize the urea. So there's so many different aspects, societal, right? Whether it's taboo, societal, whether it's the pharmaceutical, medical, industrial complex. It's a massive call to action, almost in a really subtle way, where you're getting the reader interested in this and inviting them to step into a place of self-reflection and perhaps bravery and courage to try it themselves. There's a how-to part of it where you're giving explicit instructions. Like there are more modalities than even the ones that I mentioned that I would include. But for now, that's what comes in terms of the things to celebrate about your paper. So I'm stoked about what came out. I think that it's a really clear path forward for further research to be developed upon. Yeah, I'm really proud that the Institute for Aliveness can celebrate you in this way and share this really important topic with the world. Very, very needed. Yeah, on a scale of like needed. It's high. I hope. Who wants to go next? Annie, Alyssa, I'll let you guys just.
I can go. I mean, Daniela, are you okay? Or yeah. Okay. So the title of my paper was Can Natural Medicine Help Transgender People? So I got this curiosity while during the semester on body, because I thought that these people might have been cut out from the kind of discourse that we were doing about health and coming back to your natural health, and you know, like all that we are studying, and in a way preaching, I would say, but applying in any case. And I wanted to know if there are some disciplines within natural medicine that can be of a support for people that have that, like now we define transgender. So the paper ended up being a collection of what already, I mean, other people had been researching upon, because I didn't have a first-hand experience like myself. I managed to get in touch with a couple of transgender people that had tried to use natural medicine, especially herbs. And indeed, the vast majority of I would say almost totality of the information that I found on the web and like in books, it regards herbs. And so it ended up being a bit of a compendium on what was said about it. And I felt the urge to contextualize a bit the situation of transgender, so-called transgender people. And the first paragraph was dedicated to speak about why is that now we end up in this situation with people that have to be labeled as transgender and that have to go through what they go through in modern society, in contemporary society actually, and why isn't our society simply accepting that these people that have like a body appearance related to biological sex actually have a soul that is, you know, like it's different from, it doesn't match in the way. And I contextualize it a bit historically, and I've seen that there, like, these situations have existed for like as long as the human beings exist, and document their stories. And like in past cultures, it was widely, not widely I would say, but it was accepted. And there was a third gender or a fourth gender in many cultures, and many of these people were considered to have like a stronger connection to the divine or not. For example, in Africa, they were just like, in some culture, they were just allowed to marry, for example, if they were born biologically male, they were still allowed to marry, you know, like another biological male without much problems. And so like the first question is like question in like a broader term is like why I mean, like the problem is the duality, like the of our society, the fact that we have to be either or, that there's no nothing in between. And starting from this assumption, and which is also so like the paper was exploring really the nuances, I would say. And also when it comes to talking about natural medicine. And natural medicine, in this case, what I have like discovered, it's like a specifically focused on herbalism, because that's what I found the most material. And of course cannot, and it's not the aim of natural medicine to get to the same result as Western medicine. So as we were talking with Lucy, you as a natural medicine practitioner, you kind of cure the person, not the disease. So the idea is a lot broader. Clearly, if a person is born with female gonads, or you know, like it's not going to produce as much testosterone as a male, like a male born, let's say. So the results that are reached with injecting in people's body testosterone cannot be replicated. But the idea behind using herbs and natural medicine to feel more at ease in your own body, it's different. It's not just a mere replication, or, you know, like something that has to do with how you appear. It's more how you feel. It's more, I would say, from the interviews and from what I found online, it's really how you feel. So I started the first document that I found online. I don't know if I will be able to share my screen, but maybe I'm not even trying, because I'm sure I'm not able. I'm not very. It was an interview of an herbalist that is actually working with transgender people, or queer, let's say, and what struck me the most, it was that he is using herbs to support them in this journey, because, and of course to support them and try to, for example, give them herbs to make, you know, like to make hair grow a little bit more, or the contrary. But what he was saying, it's like, I support them because the world outside is harsh with people that have this kind of experience, of life experience. So I support them with herbs for the nervous system. Basically what we have been studying with Lucy, right? So you support the whole system in order for to reach a little result, little by little. Okay, so it is the same idea. And I found a lot of herbs that I used, some books that are being released, experiences from both transitioners in both direction, and they were very happy with the result. But it's not a result like that like resembles anyways to surgery results, or you know, like to what the hormones do. I didn't focus so much on a list of herbs, because they are not widely, but like they are kind of available online, that have been like I would say 10 maybe herbalists that have been creating websites with a list of resources for colleagues. And this SF herbalist that I feel like mentioning, because she is, I mean, I didn't manage to interview her, and she's an herbalist. I interviewed another colleague of hers, and another herbalist from Italy, who happened to be transgender, let's say, who also gave me some information and ideas. And there is this San Francisco herbalist that, like, on her website, like the herbs are like explained, when to use this, how much. So I didn't want to replicate her works, also because she has a massive experience, so it doesn't make any sense. I just like mention a couple of these herbs. What I ended up doing, it's more of a contextualization of the situation, and trying to observe what happens from the chemical point of view with the chemical hormones that they give you at the hospital. And really the question is, how did we get to such a type of society in which you force someone to go through such a, I mean, like, traumatic experience, by all means, as to go to a judge? No, first go to a psychiatrist that for 6 months, that decides that you are like sane, and that yes, you actually are suffering from gender dysphoria. Then you go to a judge that decides if you are to be the other sex or not, and change your documents. It's like, so this was, yeah, it was interesting and puzzling at the same time, because it is, man, we have gone far with this. Like, I don't know, and it was interesting. I managed to speak with a couple of people, of herbalists, and of course the process were more. I mean, like, I like the paper. It's not a super scientific one, of course. The process was definitely more interesting than the result, I would say. And the topic, it's very interesting, and it's very delicate, and it's I don't know, it's very unbelievable when you think about what we do to ourselves in general, in society, and in which situation we put ourselves. But yeah, so it was cool.
Yeah. I'll give you guys a chance if you want to ask any questions.
Alicia, what made you decide to go to that topic, transgender?
Yeah, I'm very close to the community, not to the community, but I have like some friends and some very close people in my life that are transgender. And I mean, I saw in myself a lot of resistances when this topic entered my life. And I consider myself super open, you know, like whatever. But like, when it really touched my life, my like daily, like day to day, I was like, man, this is strong. And so it's like full of contradiction, you know, like from inside of me. And yeah, and then I see this mirrored in society in a way, and still it's so, it's so cruel. And I didn't want to admit that maybe natural medicine was another thing that was cutting them off. So I wanted to see if there was any ways. But yeah, the problem is not really the type of medicine that you apply. I think, from my opinion, it's more like the mindset that pushes you to have to decide either you call yourself one like this or that. So it's like, yeah, it's another.
That's so sad. It's sad.
Yeah, very hard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the paper that I've been bragging about to everyone, just for its nonconformist, radical, courageous nature. And in speaking about the Institute for Aliveness's ethos of inclusivity and going where people haven't gone, that level of pioneering, and talking about what's not being discussed. This is a beautiful example. Alyssa's journey, because it did get to start earlier on, whereas many of you kind of were waiting till the last minute, we got to journey down all these avenues of research. And I think it was hugely valuable for her to be doing those interviews firsthand. And that's really something that added not only to your own experience, but to the outcome of the paper, was you know, interviewing people on multiple continents about their own experience with this. It's something that is not, let's say, an embodied research paper. There's no ability necessarily for that. It's funny because it actually took this presentation now for me to kind of sit back into it and realize that you almost did 2 term papers in one, Alyssa. And I know that we were, like, there was a lot of like minute counter corrections that we went through in the process of figuring out how the term paper would come. And it was definitely a journey more than the outcome, even though the outcome is amazing. And I want to share it across the world. And I think it will have a tremendous impact on the transgender community, because someone who's not one of them, right, as I don't want to us and them, but someone who's not identifying as transgender is doing this research on behalf of us. Like, if that's not an ultimate symbol of love, and if that's not something to heal or cure the sadness that you referred to, Danny, then what is? And so as a gift to the community that you've really given and spent time on, Alyssa, like, that's to be celebrated in and of itself. And hopefully that's more of the impetus of why we do research, rather than it being something that's funded by a pharmaceutical company to make more money, you know, or something that some professor with tenure somewhere wants to do. And that's what ends up happening. Like, let there be an actual need for the research. And so what I was saying before was, it's almost like you did 2 papers in one, because almost embodiment and sexuality and gender could have been a topic in and of itself. And the historical contextualization that you did here, and the societal really inventory almost, is so valuable in its own right. And this is definitely an issue or a topic that bridges body, mind, and spirit, one could argue. And yet, at the end of the day, it comes down to body, especially when surgery is mentioned. And so that in itself almost could have been a paper. And yet, it was almost like you were providing solutions in a similar way that Laura was harnessing a call to action. You were providing solutions by sharing what you had learned from the herbalists. And I'm super excited that this is the kind of stuff that we get to go into together. And I hope that it opens everyone's minds, current students and future students, to be able to think outside of the box, and also to represent the underrepresented, and that quality of marginalization is something that I personally really want TIFA to stand for. And this is something that we're doing a lot in the psychedelic renaissance, in that level of activism of queer, transgender, people of color, looking at access to psychedelics, societal support or not, perhaps drug enforcement, law enforcement, how it's so much more likely to get caught. Like, what is the reality of people? And true inclusion is not about provision. It's not about saying, well, it's accessible to everyone. True inclusion is equanimity, looking at what someone's actually struggling with, what their reality is. And then how can we say, okay, let's make society pander to you, but how can we have the discourse that's going on in any kind of centralized think tank address the real true challenges and problems of any marginalized minority? So Aho, yes. Thank you for sharing. All right, Danny, you are up, my love. Let's see what you researched.
I'm going to use my earphones because my voice is a bit soft. So yeah, I went back and forth with a lot of topics. So first, I wanted to do a case study on one of my friends who has gone through quite a lot of changes, and was quite a lot of hormonal changes because of stress, and I was going to use her as a case study, but I wanted to have more research. I wanted to do more actual research, and I written about something that I'm very passionate about, and that is why hormonal birth control is not the answer. I was on the pill for almost 16 years. I originally started taking it as a prescription for my acne. I tried antibiotics and I tried all kinds of things and nothing worked. And when I went on the pill, my skin cleared in like a month. So I thought it was a really easy fix, and I was on it for a very long time. And after some time, I just stayed on it as contraception as well. And it was devastating to realize what it did to my body, because I could really experience, and even though in this paper I didn't really write about my own personal experience, it kind of fired the reason why I wanted to write about it. And like I could definitely see a lot of mood swings, almost like bipolar, like super happy, super depressed, a lot of anxiety, a lot of weight gain, like things like cellulite and this kind of stuff. Like I could really see. And when I went off it, obviously it's a slow process and you get a lot of horrible side effects, and for years your body's trying to rebalance that. And I think it's so important to educate people, especially young girls, like why not just to take medicine to fix your symptoms. So for me, very interesting. I learned that in the 1950s, the pill was actually invented as a contraception, but because contraception was illegal, they then actually recommended it to help irregular periods and irregular kind of symptoms. And then it was kind of masked as a like fix all kind of thing. Any problem you have, like painful periods, irregular periods, anything, just you get prescribed this pill. And the kind of symptoms was just very, almost in a way, hidden, like, or just downplayed. And that was like, it's still even being downplayed. And like the more modern contraceptions are believed to have a lesser impact in terms of breast cancer and all these kind of things. And there was quite a few articles going, especially focusing, or research that I found that goes into the depression element, and how even it's so, like it could be from taking the pill once, or it could be from taking the pill long term, and how those hormones and those artificial hormones really impacts and has a toll on your body's hormones. And yeah, I mean, there's so many crazy things, like even hair, like pattern of baldness, hair loss, how it interrupts your gut microbiome. What else was quite interesting? Yeah, the loss of sex and libido. So really, like, obviously the how it works is it reduces your body's ability to produce hormones, natural hormones that is required for you to have ovulation and to have that bleed. And because of the, if for example, like me, I had a lot of androgens that caused the overproduction of oil. So then if I'm on the pill, when I go off it, I have even less, I have even more, because my body's trying to produce more, because the pill's releasing like an artificial hormone. So it just completely like numbs off my own body's ability to produce these hormones. And yeah, it was really interesting. And I just really want to make a case that there's so many other options. And yeah, hormonal birth control is really not the answer. And it's so good to have a period, and you learn so much from the body by knowing, like what Andi mentioned, you know, is your period regular? Is it heavy? Is it, you know, what is your body trying to tell you? So it's so important to also have a period and not to have that like artificial bleed. And yeah, so I think I can go a little bit more into, I would like to go a little bit more, would have liked to go a little bit more into some of the other things in terms of period, but I had to stick to one topic. And yeah, so that was my case. I'm not sure if it was scientific enough. So maybe Andi, you can give me some feedback.
Yeah! I want to open if anyone has any questions for Danny before. So, Elisa, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just was wondering. You said that you experienced a lot of side effects, and but that it takes years. How long do you think it might take to kind of detox? Or how do you see when you are detoxing and when your body is changing? Or yeah.
Well, I've only been off the pill for like just over a year, and I definitely saw, because what happens is like it affects your insulin levels, and it prevents your body from building muscle, and it really plays a role. So I could definitely see a change in my weight and my muscle tone and stuff. But things like my mood swings and like kind of having that low kind of, that could also be PMS, but that hormonal disturbances in terms of being happy and then sad, it's still there. Skin, I mean, it's slightly better, but it was really bad for a long time. So I think everybody's different. I definitely can see my liver is impacted, and it will take many, many years, a lot of detox, a lot of fasts to get through and to clean my liver, because that's also why the skin breaks out. It's because the liver is overburdened. So then instead of using the liver to help detox, it's using the skin as an outlet. So I don't know, I think it will take a very long time. If you think 16 years of taking this every single day, so it will take quite a while.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, so we have such a I love that you guys showed up today. First, thank you for showing up. Second, we have such a beautifully balanced gathering of term paper and topics. And what Danny, what you're stepping forward with is addressing a massive societal need, like this big gaping hole. Whereas with Alyssa's, we were looking at the margins and the marginalized people and what's not being discussed. This is almost what's not being discussed for, you know, half of society. And so just super, super, super celebrating this. I do want to answer, it was very scientific in the way that you were expressing hormones, that you were expressing the effect on the musculature system, that you were expressing regulation, toxicity, things like this. Like, it was very much enough body in a perfect way. There's not a lot of research done long-term, both on the use and lack thereof or getting off of birth control. So massive opportunity for calling for more research. Alyssa, to answer your question specifically, to detox 16 years of any kind of pharmaceutical medication will take at least half the time if you're not doing any intensive practices, if she's just like normally eating and whatever. When we bring colonics, specifically Wood's method gravity colon hydrotherapy, into the equation, and we do intensive sessions, then she's going to be able to release that pharmaceutical residue much, much, much faster. In general, obviously, detoxing diet and lifestyle, living in accordance with the moon, using these other principles, whether it's herbal medicine or whether it's autourine therapy, to recalibrate, or chlorophyll from wheatgrass to recalibrate one's system. It is this full mixed modality, holistic, bigger picture epigenetic approach that will help one to detox birth control. But the biggest thing here is really the call to what's wrong. And there's not really a better way to say that, that people aren't aware of, because it's something that's made so normative in society. Right? Oh yeah, of course I'm on birth control, or a guy expects you to be on birth control. It almost bleeds over to all of these other topics that we're addressing in the course, which, like mind, right? Our own sexuality, our ability to communicate, or our inability to communicate. It can obviously bleed over to family planning, and there's also an element that I would almost add into a greater conversation about birth control of the world is highly uneducated and we're no longer living tribally. And so what that means is that, and I'm not a big fan of neoliberal education. I don't think that necessarily we're going to be a much better world if everyone just gets put into a factory school. Nonetheless, we are living in a society, cities, right? More than half of the global population is living in an urban area. So we are no longer in that tribal network that's self-sustaining and takes care of itself. So in one way or another, we've become responsible for one another as this species of humanity by the way in which we've chosen to live. And so birth control kind of answered the real public health need for family planning, so that we didn't overpopulate endlessly, because our food systems have changed, because agriculture came about. Before agriculture, if you didn't find food, like your tribe dies. Sorry, period, the end. Great population control. And now that the world is so artificially landscaped, literally, by humanity and this human species, we come forth into a time where we have to do something, and birth control was something that was needed, and yet it was the pendulum kind of swung too far. Yes, it's a solution for now, but what if? And are there other solutions? Are there lifestyle-based solutions? Are there ways that we can change how we organize in culture so that people won't massively reproduce endlessly? Or if they do, is there a way that has less consequences, like male birth control, And if women were in charge of pharmaceutical agencies way back then, that probably would have been the way, rather than having it be something that women are doing to toxify their body. So it's a huge conversation that we can have here. It's something that just a few weeks ago, I was actually checking in with the research, because I wanted to write about this stuff 10 years ago when it wasn't a popular thing. But thankfully, there's a lot going on with sexuality blogs, with just the internet in general has proliferated, and people are coming out and saying things that haven't been said at a larger scale before. And the kind of march against birth control is definitely one of those things. It's not as loud as I would like it to be in our post-Me Too era, so maybe we can make a hashtag and help it go viral. And there are lots of other people that are doing this work. And so this is a great opportunity for TIFA to have this be one of our many campaigns. I mean, something that I've always done in the career is like have campaigns, because campaigns are ways that you can communicate one small thing, like food for breakfast was a campaign. It's one simple idea that everyone can kind of latch onto and get, and you can share. And it can be a movement that goes through. And like Danny, you can choose the name for whatever you want it to be, but and there might already be a campaign and a hashtag, but kind of ushering this forward, because it is something that is so needed. And yeah, thank you for writing this paper. I'm really happy of where we came to after all the different tries.
Yes. Thank you also for guiding me to the right. But definitely, like, it's important to mention, because I mean, birth control has its place, but it doesn't have to be artificial pharmaceutical birth control. So that is the main point. It's not that birth control is bad. It's the actual pharmaceutical drug, or whatever you can call it, that has such a toll on the human body and the health.
And I think as a researcher, that's a really important specificity to make, and super responsible to be able to make that. And so from like modalities of research, right, you're coming definitely from mixed modality. There's an embodied part of it where you saw what it gave to you, not only physically, but at an emotional level as well. And then the other parts of looking at existing scientific literature, existing case study literature, and really kind of buffer it. But more than anything, this was the quality of paper that is what, I mean, I don't want to use the word polemic, but it was kind of like you had a really strong hypothesis at the beginning, which is that pharmaceutical birth control is harming people's bodies. Here's how. And then all of the societal and everything goes into to make your experiment or your research really more robust. Yeah. Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thanks.
All right, so I know we're over time. Laura, you have a question?
Yeah, just one quick comment. That thank you, Danny, because you've made me realize something, that when you said that you took birth control for 16 years, I raised my eyebrows, and then I did my own math, and I was the same. I was like, wow. And my right little finger has low stents in it, which is the liver and the heart, so the liver on the right side. And I was like, okay, I did drink alcohol, but okay, a bit, but not so much. I was like, it probably comes from that. And I've been told my liver is weak through reflexology, and just putting two and two together, it's the birth control that I've never realized.
Yeah, it's
Thank
crazy.
you. So maybe the campaign be like, look at your little right finger. Diagnostics.
I love it. Yeah. I have the frown lines.
Yeah, and I mean, there's millions of other women like you guys who, you know, it's really cool because it's something that's very intimate. It has to do with sexuality. It has to do with the ovum. It has to do with femininity. And it's also something that every single day a woman has to remember to take that pill. And so it's been such a constant presence in a woman's life. And then after that, right, it's a huge open doorway to massive amounts of responsibility and accountability. I've been doing this to myself. Yeah. And so it's almost like could be a poster board topic for being an entryway or that gateway into deeper reflection about applied epigenetics and our responsibility for our own health, and how our decisions carve out or factor into how we experience life. Oh, amazing. You guys, thank you so much for being here. It's been really, really refreshing and lovely. I think that we had somehow showing up a perfect balance of the papers, and to anyone who didn't share today, we would love to still hear and engage with what it is that you wrote and presented. And the pathway from here is to continue editing. So reach out to me if you have a further draft. I will also give some feedback if you feel like it's perfect and let's publish now. We'll start to put it in a massive master document, and then we'll release it to the world as the Institute for Aliveness quarterly journal, where you guys will have your full byline and be super celebrated for the work that you've done. And we'll get this out there so that people can talk. And we can also do like easy, flexible things. If Danny, you want to make yours shorter and make it more of like less of a research paper and more of an article that people can read on Medium or something, then we can do that so that it's like, you know, commentary that people can engage with. If you want to make a short 1-minute video about it. If we want to put forces together and I'll make like an animation, or like the world is endless. And it's really, what do we want to represent? How do we want to communicate it? And yeah, so you guys to continue to get excited even about these past research papers as we delve into the mind and start thinking hopefully a little earlier about the term paper of this semester. And also, I mean, you've done it already, so it's going to be easier the second time around. And from this discussion, even alone, you have so many more bubbles and ideas of what to do. So big hugs.